Hello and welcome to the live stream of the online medical consultation on the treatment of the COVID-19 infection. I'm Tang Bo in Wuhan. Now, it's the sixth of such discussion of the week, and we are doing it live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Sina Weibo. The consultation platform is organized by China Global Television Network, CGTN, with the aim of helping medical professionals from around the world exchange their views and discuss on the pandemic. And if you have any questions for doctors and COVID-19 experts after the live stream, please leave them in the section below or use hashtag #MyOpinionOnCovid-19 to share your views. And CGTN will take your questions to the professionals and discuss them in the upcoming live stream. Now, let me introduce tonight's participating professionals. We have with us medics from Peking Union Medical College Hospital, one of the best hospitals in China. They are Dr. Cao Wei, physician of infectious diseases. Say hi to everyone.
Hi.
And we have with us Fan Junping, who is the pulmonologist from Peking Union Medical College Hospital. And we also have Dr. Ding Xin, attending doctor, Department of Critical Care Medicine from the hospital. And we also have Xiao Meng, assistant director from Department of Laboratory Medicine, Peking Union Medical College Hospital. Thank you very much for joining us. And from the US, we have with us guests from Princeton Medical Center, which is a leading teaching hospital for more than 40 years. We have with us today Dr. John Heim, Chair of Surgery Department from the Medical Center. And we also have Dr. Stephen Berman, Senior Vice President of the Medical Center, and Dr. David Herman, Hospital Epidemiologist, who is also Chair of Infection Control Committee from the Medical Center. And at last but not least, we have Dr. Lanjing Zhang, Vice Chair of Pathology Department from the Medical Center. Welcome you all. And from the questions we have gathered from the US side, that tonight's discussions is going to touch upon topics of masks, the use of antiviral test kits, and the risk for mortality, but not limited to those questions. So before we start our Q&A session, is there anything that you want to share with our guests from the US?
Thank you for this opportunity organized by CGTN. We are glad to show our perspectives and experiences with colleagues from the US. We've seen the collected questions raised by you in the first place, and a lot of questions was associated with the mask use. So we've done our research, and combined with our experience during daily practice, we want to make some comments about the mask use during COVID-19 pandemic. Well, first of all, at the fact level, all the support team all over the country come to Hubei. We use N95 as well as the personal protection equipment.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Fan. Please just move the microphone a little bit to yourself. Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I will repeat. We are going to cover something about the mask use first. From the fact level, all the support medical team from outside of Hubei in China, there are about 40,000 people here. We all use N95 and personal protection equipment during our practice, caring for those patients. And so as far as we know, there's no reported infection among medical staff from outside of Hubei among those 40,000 people. Secondly, a lot of doctors are worried about the nosocomial infection or the outbreak among medical staff. As we know, all the outbreaks among medical staff happen generally in the initial stage when the knowledge about the COVID-19 is very limited at that time. We've done our small research, and the colleagues here in Wuhan said most of the doctors get infected and nurses get infected are due to symptomatic carriers, as well as the infected patients inside the family. Well, we also have got a recommendation by the State Council about the use of masks. They strongly recommend that we choose masks after classification of scenarios and patient caring. At low-risk areas or personnel without direct contact to patients or suspected patients, we recommend only surgical masks. Secondly, if you're gonna involve with patients or suspected patients, or you work in the ER or fever clinic in a high-risk area, we recommend N95. Thirdly, if you have to do aerosol generating procedures such as sputum suctioning, intubation, or resuscitation, we do recommend N95 mask plus PPE and plus other higher level stuff such as positive pressure respirator. And we did do like that way during our ICU stay and ICU caring. Last but not the least, despite the mask use, we believe room ventilation, necessary distancing, and hand hygiene is of equal importance in caring about COVID-19 and prevent medical staff from getting infected. Well, we kind of understand that there must be a shortage of N95 and other stuff like PPE during this time. We really want to suggest that you should boost up the production capacity for such equipment, because the medical staff is the most valuable assets in this battlefield fighting against the COVID-19. Well, again, there are some questions about reusing the masks here. We don't do it. We use it only for one time, and we do not reuse them again. Okay, if any other questions or about the masks, we can talk a little.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for doing this with us. We are very grateful, and we hope to learn from your experience. And, we're glad to hear that the measures that have been going on in China have been successful in trying to decrease the case rates. We're getting news here that you're having very few or no new cases. So thank you again. So we don't have enough N95 masks here. It's one of the biggest problems. We actually will run out probably within a week if we at our current rate. And in the United States, there's no way to get N95 masks. Our recommendation for our medical staff has been for a PUI or for a COVID positive patient, that the patient should be masked with a regular surgical mask, and the healthcare provider should be masked with a regular surgical mask, plus goggles, plus other PPE. The only time that we're recommending N95 or the PAPRs are for patients who are having aerosolized procedures, intubation, suctioning, and so on. We're having a little difficulty actually in convincing our medical staff that that's an appropriate protection, because, for example, our anesthesiologists and our OBGYNs want to wear N95 masks all the time, and we just don't have that availability. So from your experience, unless there's a high risk of aerosolization, the approach of having the surgical mask for the patient and for the provider is sufficient. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, we really want to recommend wear something. No matter you're OBGYN doctor, pediatrician, no matter you treat the COVID-19 patient directly or indirectly, wear something. We've just said that we totally understand there must be a kind of shortage of N95 during this time. just as we experienced in Wuhan like 1 month ago. We're not sure whether a surgical mask is enough. And the principle we apply here is to protect the doctors and nurses as good as we can, as well as we can. And we did achieve something, which I mentioned earlier. No medical staff here from staying here in Wuhan from outside Hubei got infected.
And what's your take? Sorry, a question. What's your take on their measures of dealing with the shortage of the face masks, including like PUI, if I get it
I'm
right?
having trouble hearing you. Can I speak louder?
Can you hear me now?
Whoever's speaking, if you could use the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear them now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, better.
Yeah, first of all, we want to recommend wear something. If no matter you are a pediatrician or OBGYN doctor, whether you care for the COVID-19 patient directly or not, wear something. Surgical mask helps. But right now, we believe there's no sufficient evidence to say, well, if you don't have N95, surgical mask is okay. Because we don't do it that way here. We here in Wuhan, we always wear N95. Well, we are not sure what to do when N95 is in short. So we just suggested that government maybe you should boost up the production capacity for N95, just so as to get the medical staff well protected to fight this, because it's going to last for some time maybe.
Dr. Brand, sorry.
I can add a few words. So the estimated protection rate of surgical mask is actually about 70%. So you can evaluate if this kind of protection is enough for your medical staff in your medical center. So actually, one thing you can do is to divide the patients at the first time you touch them or you contact with them. For example, those who are being exposed to unknown patients' sources should wear the standard protection. For example, those in the outpatient clinic, for example, fever clinic or emergency room, and those, because they are exposed to unknown risks, we strongly recommended they wear the 4 sets of standard protection. But after the patients have been tested, if possible, for COVID-19, or have been taking their chest X-rays or chest CT, and to a large extent has been ruled out for the possibility of COVID-19, then the following contact with this patient can be taken and wearing surgical mask. I think that's possible. I don't know if this can be done in your center.
So the problem that we have, first of all, there just aren't enough N95 masks. If we used it for everyone, we would just run out. The second issue is that we don't have enough testing resources. So our test turnaround time is 5 days or 6 days. So, that also increases the use of our PPE. And finally, the World Health Organization, actually, their recommendation is a surgical mask, not an N95.
Can I speak?
We all recognize that an N95 would be preferable, but I just don't think we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I believe there are difficulties for the time being, but I'm sure we all know that the problems won't be solved if we stay still in this stage. So at this time, we can only do the things we can. We are facing actually with the same situations the first few days we arrived in Wuhan, because all the hospitals or wards are actually emergently set up or modified for caring patients of COVID-19. But things are improving. For example, medical protection devices or facilities in China have been improved. And now with the recovered production of these facilities.
This is Dr. Hein. I'm a thoracic surgeon here at the hospital and head the Department of Surgery.
I think we lost the track.
Who's that? Is there someone in the screen or?
Hello?
Any newcomers?
Yeah, any newcomers?
I think you're right. They're not moving, so I guess at least our video is gone and I don't hear them.
But we can still hear your voice. Audio is good. Dr. John, any questions from you?
Right, I mean, if we had N95s, we'd be using them.
Yeah. I mean, that's where they make them, so they have access to a lot that we don't.
Actually, maybe I can add some few words, because actually, when we in the initial stage facing the COVID-19, actually we also do not have enough productivity for the N95 because it's Spring Festival in China. And then actually in our hospital, in
Tesla's
Beijing,
going to make ventilators for us.
sorry,
Right? Yeah.
sorry, can you hear me?
I think that, the U.S. actually has stocks of N95. They just haven't released it yet. The Army
It's
is on.
It's like our strategic oil reserves. There's a strategic reserve of masks and antibiotics and PPEs. I'm sure the military's got tons and tons of that stuff.
Oh, they're discussing that the military has enough face masks and antiviral stuff.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us? What's the situation now in the U.S.? You just mentioned that.
Hello?
Did you test them?
Hello?
Okay, yeah, I tried to do that. Hold on.
We are lost.
We are lost.
Okay, we just lost 2 guests.
It's a nice humanitarian thing.
Okay, yeah, so what's your take on their measures taken by the U.S. professionals?
They turned off their videos and
Uh-huh.
just
You mean-
use their.
Shall we repeat all we have said?
No, you don't have to. Yes, we can just have a little discussion about the situation in the U.S.
Well,
So they don't have enough face masks?
Steve, yeah. With the company, I think probably should just jump in the question about the
Masks, yes.
That's beyond our capacity.
Okay.
从哪儿开始？
What about you, Dr. Zhang? Any questions from you want to know?
Croaking. Yes. Do you just say that you want to know last question about croaking? Dr. Zhang?
Chloroquine.
That hasn't been the experience everywhere else. Sorry, you're back.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. We're still here.
Okay, I thought I would shift the questions around a little bit from the N95 masks.
Okay.
Again, just to introduce myself, I'm Jack Heim. I'm a thoracic surgeon by training and still do a good amount of surgery and lead the department of surgery here. My question is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, you still have a large population that needs ongoing health care. And I'd like to know what you've done to reserve capacity in your hospitals to treat all the actual and potential COVID-19 patients while still caring for the rest of your population. For example, we here, starting on Monday, have canceled all elective surgeries. And that has freed up a large capacity at our hospital to absorb patients with this infection. And I'm wondering how you handle this problem.
This is Dr. Cao. Actually, situations are different depending on where you are, inside Hubei province or outside Hubei province. Outside Hubei province, because all of the diagnosed patients are actually a relatively small number. So the majority of the hospitals are still running their ordinary way, but try to reduce the numbers of elective surgeries, such as those who can be waited. And emergent surgeries, I believe, in most places are still going on the way. Am I heard?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, but inside Hubei, that's a totally different story. For example, in Wuhan, at the first 2 months, as you said, all the medical needs of a large population have been postponed because COVID-19 related epidemic is a major health threat at that time. So one approach of some places is to divide hospitals into two parts. One is to carrying the ordinary medical service functions, and the other hospitals, a lot of it has been designed by the government to be specifically designed for COVID-19. And these hospitals are those mainly the medical aid team stays. Yeah.
Well, moreover,
We've had two major reasons for curtailing elective surgeries, and that's number one, to prepare for a surge and keep our hospital as empty as possible. But the secondary reason, and maybe even a bigger reason at this point, because we have very few patients in our hospital now being treated for this problem, so we have huge capacity. But by limiting the number of elective surgeries, we've had a dramatic reduction in potential exposure between people coming into the hospital, not just patients, but their families who could potentially infect our hospital workers, doctors, nurses, and all our staff. So our secondary reason has been to prevent exposure and encounters that would jeopardize our medical staff.
yeah, we totally agree with you. We applied a similar strategy at the initial stage of COVID-19 pandemic in China. Our mother hospital in Beijing, we used the same strategy as you did. Also, I have something to add on Dr. Cao's comment. The first one is the testing capacity of COVID-19 here in China is largely augmented just because the pandemic. So we are able to test everyone if he or she is planned to be admitted. That's the first thing. Because the learning capacity is very large. So the testing capacity is very large. So we can differentiate them from non-infected people. The second thing I want to say is the government has provided or published guidance about recovering the normal function of a hospital or medical care system here in China, both inside of Hubei and outside of Hubei. Just because the newer cases of COVID-19 is decreasing sharply recently. So we're trying to restore the original function of the medical system just to reduce the damage to the health of people who did not have COVID-19.
And with respect to testing for COVID-19, we're experiencing issues not just with the testing and the long turnaround, but the collection kits. You need a viral media in the collection kits. After you've done the swab, you put the material in the kit, and the kit requires viral media. So that's one problem that we're experiencing, not enough test kits. And then the other is our tests are done in big labs in central locations that are far away and take a long time to turn over and get us a result. I'm wondering, how is it that you had all these test kits ready to go, and are your tests done locally at each hospital or medical center, or are they sent out to a central diagnostic lab that tests the material and sends back results?
Okay, I'm Dr. Xiao, and I can answer this question. So for the testing, actually in the initial stage, actually China CDC and the whole national CDC system require all the samples sent to the CDC system for testing of COVID-19 for molecular testing. But soon they found it's above their capacity to fulfill their requirement because there are too many patients waiting for testing, including in Hubei and outside of Hubei. And as you mentioned, it's long turnaround time. In China, it's around maybe 6 hours to 8 hours in minimum for testing because we need transport time from local hospital, collect the samples and send to CDC lab and then get back the results. So, but patients have to wait in the fever clinic. So then we have the strategy that open some of the hospital's clinical laboratory, Department of Laboratory Medicine, who have the standard molecular lab to test these patients. But in some hospitals, when they got a positive result, they have to send it to CDC for double check. But for our mother hospital, in the middle of our Spring Festival is maybe late January, we already got the certification or approval from the government, the China CDC, that we can directly give a confirmative result for the COVID-19 patients. And the testing, if you told about...
The network, there's something wrong with the network, and we are lost here.
Dr. Ding, you can speak to the microphone if you want to add something.
Okay, we are lost.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Technology is failing us.
Yeah, you can go on. You can go on.
Can you hear me?
Hello. I think for your COVID positive patients, I'd be interested in any therapies, hydroxychloroquine or other antivirals or antibiotics, and when you start and what doses.
对，这另外一个问题。
By the way, you are muted.
muted.
Peking,
It's muted.
you're muted.
Wait a moment.
Okay,
Okay, good.
is that okay now?
Use that
Yes,
microphone
yeah.
over there on your right.
Okay.
Okay.
According to the guidelines of Chinese government for COVID-19, they recommended in the seventh edition, they recommended some broad spectrum antivirals to use, especially specific at the initial period of the disease. However, as you may also know, all the published randomized study of antivirals haven't changed enough capacity to be efficacy to be used in this virus. So our viewpoints as in our medical team is that antivirals, if there's any candidates or efficacy, may only be used at the initial period of the infection, the initial stage. As we observed from our patients, as we are treating almost all the critically ill patients, in the late stage, the changes in the patients, like multi-organ injuries, are not only caused by the direct injury of the virus, but also by other indirect effects from the body. So we think that at the late stage, antivirals may not have such a big effect. For the question of chloroquine, yeah, it is also mentioned in some studies. The most recently published study was one published this year, which was an in vitro study showing that this drug may have efficacy in vitro. However, this hasn't been tested broadly in human beings. There is one small study, but it was not controlled nor randomized, showing that this drug may have efficacy in mild-type patients. But just as I mentioned, it is not randomized, it is not controlled. So the results of this trial is suspecting for me. We are not using chloroquine in our patients right now. So just for your reference, I know that the US has already taken that as one of the triple therapies in your mild or common type of patients. I wonder, what do you think when you want to incorporate this medicine into your empirical treatment?
We have not done that yet. We agree that there's not much evidence that of its efficacy, but it's not an innocuous drug, so we're going to be careful about it. But I think that there's interest in its use. I think that the antivirals have not stood up right yet, so we're not using antivirals on a regular basis.
Interestingly, the drug was also tested in 2003 on the coronavirus SARS, but also in vitro studies. And we haven't seen the results of in vivo studies ever since then. So I doubt if there would be a result. But I'm sure after the pandemic starts, the results will soon come out, which will provide more evidence for us.
Well, I have something to add. Well, actually, I totally agree with what Dr. Cao said, because our patients are all critically ill, and most of them do not have a positive PCR test anymore. So we don't believe any antivirals, including hydroxychloroquine, is useful in such patients. But because I'm a pulmonologist, we use steroid and immunodepressants all the time. Among them, hydrochloroquine is very light, and the side effects are very limited. You do not expect very severe side effects from using hydrochloroquine. Since we are lacking of strategies and medications, especially in the initial stage for mild disease, I believe we can use it if you want to. Also, in the published data, they use it with azithromycin plus hydrochloroquine with a dosage of 200 milligrams TID. It's no big deal in terms of cost or side effects. If you want to use it, I think we can give it a try. But it's definitely not useful or close to not useful among critically ill patients. And also, I have something to comment about the long turnaround time for PCR testing at this time of pandemic. We experienced similar situations about 1.5 months ago, just because the CDC have to double check to make sure of it. Again, because I'm a pulmonologist, I rely on CT or other chest imaging techniques very much. As we know, also per published data, the CT imaging characteristics of COVID-19 is kind of very obvious. You will see bilateral ground glass opacities, then evolving to consolidations, then traction bronchiectasis plus reticular pattern. So especially in the early stage, if you do a CT, a lot of patients are abnormal. So you may be able to differentiate them from normal patients or those uninfected ones. However, we have to keep it clear that a negative CT is not able to rule out real patients, because at early stage they can be normal. The CT can be normal.
Interestingly, our radiologists are not saying that CT is helpful, and it takes an hour to decontaminate the machine after potential patients. So we're getting a lot of pushback, but I understand, and I'm going to let them know about this. One other thing, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go in a few minutes. I'm just wondering how you handled the stress of the medical staff, nurses, and there's an extremely high level of anxiety among the staff, including people who are refusing to go into rooms where there's positive patients. And I'm wondering how you were able to handle that and deal with that stress.
Okay, first I have to say that all the doctors from outside Hubei is just chosen at the first time. We have 184 doctors and nurses from our mother hospital, which contains about 4,000 to 5,000 doctors and nurses, and we are chosen here. So at first we have to prepare that we may be involved in such a campaign. And before we just get in touch of the patients, we are trained. We are trained that how to protect yourself, how to wear your masks, how to wear your personal protective equipment, and we got enough information about how to deal with these patients. And the hospital and the hospitals can provide us all the equipment and all the personal protective equipment to protect us. So that will reduce our stress and And after our patients get decreased, and we have more rest time, and this time can help us to recover. So till now, as we know, none of our doctors and nurses get some stress or PTSD. We don't have that. And we are all very glad that the situation in Wuhan is getting better and better.
One of the most important things you try to relieve your medical workers is knowledge. The knowledge what Dr. Ding have mentioned to protect yourself, to know that you are safe under this protection is important. And another important thing we are actually done in our intensive care unit is try to measure the environment, where the environment which can be potentially exposed to the patients, are they safe enough for you to stay there, within there? So we actually test all the waters, drainages from incubators and ventilators and things like that, to show that the surrounding environment is very safe for you to stay in there. And there has been tested no virus. So that's another important thing to make your medical staff to be relieved at this environment.
Well, personally, I feel stress. I'm stressful, but not that much.
Even now?
Not anymore. We
different
were
reasons.
stressful, and we think it's the reaction of a normal human. If you're not stressful in front of this pandemic, you should check with your doctor, maybe. But the two most supportive things I've obtained to overcome those stress is, first one, we work together, we stick together. We worked in a different hospital, in the same hospital, although different departments, but we share a lot of experiences. We have the common training. We also had done a lot of cooperative work at home. So when we form up a new team, we just, we know what each other's manner or experience. We can work together, stick together. That's the biggest relief I can have. The second one is we are well protected in terms of N95 mask or personal protective gears. We are not short for materials such as N95. So that's a bigger relief too. And third one, I think for medical staff, the best strategy for them or for us is to let them care about the patients only. You don't make them care for politics. You don't make them care for the shortage of production capacity. You don't make them care about horror or media. You just let them care for the patients only. So their anxiety will be largely reduced. Especially, you should make them believe that they are going to win. They are going to win this battle after the equipment and arm of knowledge, techniques, and maybe all the efforts all the society can put into to control this pandemic. That's my opinion.
And another thing I want to add is that actually we put our laboratory, Frontier laboratory, just in the ward of ICU. Except for we testing the patients, we also provide the service for the testing of our nurse and doctors whenever they got a fever. During the stage and great pressure and other annual regions, anyone could get a fever. But anytime we test them, and then we tell them you are inactive, you don't need to fear. So then they can get back to their job, their position on time.
So as far as I know, we have brought our own P2 lab here in our isolation wards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So how is that going?
Yeah, we just bring the equipment from Beijing and then put a Frontier lab there, including the majority of them are the point of care testing equipment, but also including the PCR equipment and serology testings. So actually, our first medical team from our mother hospital come here in the early February without a laboratory supported by us. It's around 21 medical staffs. And after we got here and have the lab prepared in middle of February, we test all the first medical team staff and tell them you are safe. And then after that, all our medical staffs under the same protection training, they know we are safe. So this can release their anxiety for them.
Thank you. I need to leave the meeting, but I want to again say thank you so much for all your efforts and for reaching out and helping us with these issues. And maybe we can reconnect in a couple of weeks when we get a little bit more experience, if that would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
thank you very much.
All right, Steve. Thanks, Steve.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Have a good
I've got
day.
a question about risk for mortality. We're not testing as much as we should be here because of the limited number of test kits. So we're really not sure about the risk for mortality. With your ubiquitous testing, you have a better handle on the numbers of people that have this disease and obviously the number of people who don't survive. So I'm wondering if you could give me a number as to what the risk of mortality might be for COVID-19.
About risk mortality.
Okay, I think all the numbers are in on the internet, and we check all these numbers the same route as you like, because as we just are doctors in this specific critical or intensive care unit, we don't know all the mortality numbers in Wuhan or in the whole China, but we get that information on the internet every day, and our CDC will have the number announced in the internet. And till now, the mortality rate in China is just about 4%, maybe 2 to 3% in whole China. But in Wuhan, maybe it is higher. The most serious time, I think, the mortality in Wuhan can reach about 6 to 7, the most serious time. But as we come here, and as all the doctors outside Wuhan came here to help them, and we decrease the mortality number to about just 3 to 4 in Wuhan, but outside China, only about 1%.
There is, because the epidemic hasn't ended, so strictly speaking, we cannot get a mortality rate at this time. But there is a report from the China CDC, which was published at the beginning or middle of February, that has included all the diagnosed cases in China, mainland China. And according to their synthesis, that the mortality rate all over China at that time was about 2 to 2.5% at that time. This mortality rate actually differs with the place inside Hubei because of the relatively shortage of resources at the beginning of the epidemic. The mortality rate is relatively high compared to those areas outside Hubei. But I think this mortality rate, the numbers are also changing, and because more and more people are discharged from the hospital, and still we have newly diagnosed or imported cases coming in. So this number may get a final, we may get a final number at the end of the epidemic.
Well, I totally agree with Dr. Cao. We have to admit that numbers are just numbers. It can never be 100% precise all the time. Also, we still have to think that the story inside Hubei and outside Hubei are very different. Also, the story in Wuhan in February and in March are also two very different stories. I want to emphasize here is never underestimate COVID-19. It can be really horrible if a run on the medical resources happens, if a lot of cases accumulates. So we just should be cautious, very, very careful about these numbers. Actually, what is happening right now in Italy is very familiar for Wuhan local medical staff. As we all know from the television, that the death rate or the mortality rate can be as high as 8%. It's much higher than what we have experienced here in China. So different stage, different city, different strategies can bring different mortality numbers. The numbers are just numbers.
I may add a few numbers that the rate of severity of the patients are also different inside Hubei province and outside Hubei province. In areas outside Hubei, the rate of severity is about 5 to 10%. But once the patient has entered into the critically ill or severe phase, the mortality rate is exceptionally high. And then inside the provinces of Hubei, the severity rate is about 10 to 15%. In some places can reach 20%. And the numbers we know from the intensive care unit is that once the patient has been admitted to intensive care unit, the mortality rate is something between 60 to 70%, depending on at which stage the patient is entering the intensive care unit.
Yeah, if the patient gets intubated, you should prepare to lose him or her. It's very cruel.
Yeah, we're treating this pandemic very, very seriously like yourselves. And as you know, have limited travel. And we have moratoriums on stores that are not critical. So people cannot go to restaurants. They can't go to movies. The only time they can go out is to go to the grocery store for food or for medical appointments or maybe to get gasoline. Have you instituted the same measures?
Yes, actually our government have more
Stricter.
more higher strict.
In the most
yeah.
serious time in Wuhan, every resident have to stay around his own, that's the own buildings or own brokers, and all the other people just work for them. They get everything they need to bring everything they need to their houses, like such as medicines, food, and waters. And what they have to do is that stay in their home and wait these providers to give all the supplies they have. And that's the most serious time in Wuhan. But things are getting better now.
Very good.
And I want
I have
to.
a question.
Sorry.
I have a question about the ibuprofen. Sorry, we are running almost out of time. But there's news about the ibuprofen use for COVID patients. Any recommendation or experiences?
Ibuprofen.
We never use that for the treatment of COVID-19. We just use that kind of medicine for the fever control in our patients, just as it's used in the common sense.
Any side effect at all?
Are you talking about using this drug may interfere with the treatment of COVID-19? Is that the question?
No, I just talk about at the early stage when the patient don't know they have or do not have the COVID-19 for the fever control. So some of them may take ibuprofen.
Yeah, it's acceptable.
It's acceptable. So we have not seen any severe
No.
side effect to those patients.
No.
Okay.
Well, again, I want to thank you very much. I know that you're all pretty tired, and it's
有人能听见他说
OK， 你
No, okay.
那边可以说话，
结束
他们可以
之
说话，我
前，你可以
这边断了。
问一下他们
你那边可以
对今
说话，包
天的
括我这边断了。
他觉得这个
说一句
没有。用啊什么的，现在就可以
Okay.
用
Oh.
马上就
感激的话都没有听
Okay, because of the time limit, we have to put an end to our today's meeting. Before we go, what do you think of the meeting today, Dr. Zhang and Dr. Haim?
can you repeat that?
Yes, we have to go now, but before we leave, we want to know what do you think of today's meeting, Dr. Zhang and Dr. Haim? What's your comment on today's meeting? Have we managed to answer all the questions?
We still have a lot of questions, but I think that this phone call and video conference was indeed helpful. And I think that it shows that we are all the same. We're all doctors. We're all people who care about each other. And we're making a lot of sacrifices right now to stem the tide of this horrible illness. And I think with our cooperation, we'll all be successful.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's really helpful.
That's good. It's good to hear. Thank you. I hope the meeting today could be able to help with you guys on the epidemic control and prevention in the U.S. Thank you very much
Thank you very
again.
much.
Thank you, our guests from Peking
you.
Union Medical College Hospital and the guests from Princeton Medical Center. As the epidemic situation in China has been largely kept under control, but the situation outside China, on the other side of the world, I wouldn't say it's promising. So online medical consultation meetings like this are quite necessary. So today's panel is the last one for this week, and we will take a break during the weekend, and we'll continue our worldwide discussion next week. And so stay tuned. I'll see you
Thanks
later.
again. Good night.
Good
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay, email, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, IJ. Very good.
Well, thank you.
Okay.